55-year-old James Buffalo Jim Barrier was an auto repair shop owner and WWE wrestling promoter. Friends described him as a light of joy and life. The Las Vegas Journal-Review voted him Las Vegas's most colorful character in 2005, beating out the then mayor. Jim hated corruption and was an outspoken enemy of the mob. When he was found dead in a local motel room, his family and friends were suspicious. His daughters believe he was set up and murdered. They want justice for him. At 11:30 a.m. on Sunday, April 6, 2008, at the Motel 6 on Boulder Highway in an older section of Las Vegas, a housekeeper knocked on the door of room 105 to see if it was okay for her to clean the room. When she opened the door, she noticed a man asleep on the bed. At 12:30 p.m., she came back and noticed the man was still asleep. At 1:10 p.m., she returned and found him in the same position. Another housekeeper shook him to see if he would wake up. After they got no response, they realized he was probably dead. They immediately called the police. Soon after, detectives responded to the scene. The man was lying face up on the bed with his shirt open. A pillow was behind his head. His pants were down around his ankles. His shoes were next to the bed. An empty prescription bottle of Valium was on the nightstand. The bed was still neatly made. A white powdery substance was found on the man's nose, beard, and shirt. There were no signs of a struggle or altercation in the room. According to Lieutenant Louis Roberts of the Las Vegas Metro Police, the scene was a little suspicious because there was no clear sign as to why the man was deceased. Shortly afterward, the man was identified as Jim. Jim was described as a true Las Vegas character. He was a pro wrestler, auto mechanic, and political candidate. He built a gigantic, animated, smoke-belching, papier-mâché buffalo for a Las Vegas parade. His daughter, Jennifer, says he loved Las Vegas. He loved the bright lights, the excitement, the shows, and the restaurants. Another daughter, Jerica, says he was larger than life and that he lit up the room when he walked in. Jim's father was a Cherokee Indian. He educated his daughters about their backgrounds. He always told them to remember their ancestors and lineage. According to his daughters, his childhood was not easy. He grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. He began working at a gas station at the age of 15, doing oil changes with his older brother. He slept on the gas station's floor while his brother taught him how to work on different vehicles. Eventually, Jerica went back to live with Jim. According to Jennifer, he treated Jerica like a queen. They were inseparable and went everywhere together. Jerica says every day with him was exciting because they always did something new. Jennifer says he was so much fun, and he would always bring excitement with him. Jim loved wrestling, and according to his friend, professional wrestler Johnny Payne, Jim always wanted to run his own wrestling school and company. In 1996, he opened his school, the Buffalo Wrestling Federation. He taught both wrestling moves and how to create a wrestling character. From 1994 to 1998, he was also a wrestling promoter for the National Wrestling Conference in Las Vegas. Jerica describes Jim's style as badass. He was 6 feet 2 inches and wore a black velvet top hat. He had long black hair and a beard that went down to his chest. He had a ring on every finger and wore a bulletproof vest that was made of bullets. He was recognized wherever he went. Johnny says that he and Jim just clicked and became good friends quickly. Everybody wanted to be around him because he was cool to be with. Over the years, he befriended wrestlers Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Hulk Hogan, and The Undertaker. He also possessed a large collection of celebrity memorabilia. Jim had a wrestling show on late-night cable TV called Jim Wars. Las Vegas Councilman Steve Miller, Jim's longtime friend, says he had a tremendous following. When Jerica was a child, she participated in the wrestling show as his sidekick, Lil Buff. She remembers it being fun. She says he knew how to put on a show. For about 6 years, she lived with him at his dream home on Sunrise Mountain. He chose the spot because he could see the face of an Indian chief on a nearby mountain. At 7:20 p.m. on the night of Saturday, April 5, 2008, Jim left his home, telling Jerica he was going to meet a friend for dinner and would be back by midnight. Around 9:30 p.m., she texted him, but he did not reply. At 9:41 p.m., she called him, but it went straight to voicemail. At 9:50 p.m., she called him again. This time, it went through the complete cycle of rings before going to voicemail. The next morning, April 6, she called him yet again, but he still did not answer. She was alarmed and wondered what was going on with him. Around 2 p.m., Jerica and Elise were together when Jerica got a phone call from a police officer who said they were calling about Jim. The officer told them that Jim was dead and that they needed to go to the Motel 6 on Boulder Highway to identify his body. During the car ride there, they cried uncontrollably, and Elise tried to get there as fast as possible. When Jerrica and Elise arrived at the motel, they were approached by a police officer who invited them into the motel room to identify Jim's body. He was in an unzipped body bag on a stretcher. Although they knew it was him, they could not believe he was dead. Jerrica says it is still difficult and painful to think about that moment. She remembers hugging him and noticing he was very cold. She did not want to let him go. The police had to tell her to let go of him because they had to take him away. Jerrica says the police did not give them any information about how Jim was found or what happened to him. However, they did give her and Elise an envelope that contained his car keys, credit cards, wallet, which was missing his ID, cell phone, garage door opener, and receipt for the motel room. Only $1 was found in his wallet, even though Jerrica claims he left that night with a wad of cash. After she received Jim's cell phone, Jerrica immediately looked through the call log to find out who he last talked to. The last call occurred at 7:40 p.m., lasted about 7 minutes, and was with an unlisted number. There was also one new voicemail from 9 p.m. from the same number, so she listened to it. The caller said, with a tone of concern, "Hey, Buffalo, this is Lisa. Is everything okay?" Jerrica called the number, and a woman picked up. Jerrica said, "Are you Lisa?" But the woman did not reply. Jerrica then said, "Do you know Buffalo Jim?" The woman replied, "I don't know Buffalo Jim," and then hung up. According to Jerrica, the woman who spoke on the voicemail, Lisa, was the same woman who answered the phone. She wonders why Lisa left a voicemail voicing concern for Jim but later claimed she did not know him. After their call, Jerrica believed Lisa was lying and knew something about Jim's death. Jennifer was on vacation in California when Elise called and told her that Jim was dead. Jennifer was shocked and did not know what to say. Johnny says it was weird because Jim had not called him for a couple of days. Then, he received a call from Jim's phone, but it was Elise telling him that Jim had died. He says he lost a big presence in his life that day. On the morning of Monday, April 7, 2008, one day after Jim's body was found, Dr. Larry Sims, medical examiner for Clark County, was assigned to do his autopsy. He says that when someone is found dead in a motel room, they are out of their normal environment. He says he planned to consider Jim's death a homicide until proven otherwise. Jim had no significant external trauma. He was not shot, stabbed, beaten, or strangled. He had a white, powdery substance on his nose and beard. Dr. Sims' preliminary report, which was sent to Jim's family, stated there were no signs of drugs or a heart attack in his body. Dr. Sims tested for several drugs in addition to the standard drugs that are tested during an autopsy. The only positive result was cocaine. He says the minimum lethal levels for cocaine are in the 100 to 200 nanograms per milliliter range. Jim's blood level was around 250 nanograms. According to Dr. Sims, Jim also had significant heart disease. The cause of death was determined to be dilated cardiomyopathy, or inflamed heart muscles, with cocaine intoxication as a contributing factor. Dr. Sims placed the time of death between 7 and 9 p.m. on April 5. He ruled the death an accident, and the police closed the case as a result. When Jim's family received the toxicology report, they could not believe it. Jerrica had never seen him use drugs, drink alcohol, or party. Johnny says Jim loved to go out and have a great time, but Jim had never done drugs around him. He remembers Jim saying, "I'm eating clean, and I'm in the best shape of my life." His daughters say he had cleaned up his diet and was trying to get in shape. His physician gave him a clean bill of health a week before his death. Jim told Elise that he had done every kind of drug during the late 1970s and early 1980s and had a cocaine addiction. He told Jennifer that during the 1980s, he used to take cocaine every once in a while, and he was not proud of that. However, after the birth of his first daughter, he stopped doing drugs. Jennifer does not remember seeing him do drugs of any kind. But according to some friends, Jim experimented with drugs during the 1980s, up until 2000. He sometimes used drugs while he was with his wrestling friends. According to close friends, he would sometimes do a night of heavy partying as recently as 2005. Jim's attorney, Gus Flangus, says he would be shocked if Jim had actually done cocaine that night, as that would have been completely uncharacteristic of the Jim he knew. He says Jim did have a cocaine problem in his early years, but he was proud of the fact that he had beaten it. According to Jerrica, when they went to identify Jim's body, There was no evidence of cocaine in the motel room at all. Jennifer wants to know where the cocaine came from and why it was not found in the room. She says no one knows if the white powdery substance on his face and beard was actually cocaine or not. Steve Miller says the police do not know if the cocaine was straight or cut, they only said it was white powder. According to Dr. Sims, no one ever tested the cocaine on Jim's face and shirt to see what level it was, nor was it compared to the cocaine found in his system. Jim's daughters began to believe that he was set up. After learning about the voicemail from Lisa, Jennifer told the police to look into her. 10 days after Jim's death, detectives tracked her down and interviewed her. They found out she was in the motel room with Jim that night. She claimed that she had a 10-year social relationship with him. She said that on that night, a male friend of hers was in town from Arizona and needed money. He wanted to sell Jim a motorcycle. So, she called Jim and asked if they could meet. According to Jennifer, the male friend was never brought up again. After the call, Jim left to meet Lisa. She told detectives that they agreed to meet at a Chevron gas station on Charleston Boulevard. They then drove to the motel in his Rolls-Royce, which he parked in the back. At 8:22 p.m., he was seen on a security camera in the motel lobby getting a keycard for room 105. He did not appear to be in distress. The motel clerk said that Jim had purchased the room for two. A credit card receipt confirmed this. At 8:24 p.m., Jim was seen on camera walking slowly along the sidewalk in front of the lobby, with Lisa about 3 or 4 steps behind. She said that once they were inside room 105, they began playing a sexual fantasy game. According to her, Jim was using a lot of cocaine and acting paranoid. She tried to calm him down and told him to drink some water. At first, Lisa claimed that when Jim went to the bathroom, she left the motel room. However, she later changed her story. She said that after she told Jim to calm down, he laid down on the bed and started convulsing. He clutched his chest with both hands, and it appeared that he was having a mild seizure. As this was happening, she left the room. She then took a taxi back to the gas station where she had left her car. At 9:30 p.m., she left a message on Jim's cell phone, asking if he was okay, but he never called her back. Jennifer claims that Lisa's story changed several times during her interview. Jerica wonders why Lisa did not call for help if she thought Jim was having a seizure. Jennifer wonders about the male friend who wanted to sell his motorcycle. He was never interviewed by detectives. Jennifer obtained the key access report for Jim's room. It lists when a key is used to access a room and what type of key is used, such as a manager, housekeeping, or guest key. According to the report, Jim's room was accessed by a guest key at 8:15 p.m., 7 minutes before he checked in. Jerica believes someone was in the room waiting for him to check in. She and her sisters are shocked that the police never looked into this. When Jim was found dead, he had a folded $1 bill in his wallet. Jennifer says that he never folded money in his wallet. He was known to carry large amounts of cash. She wonders why he was left with a $1 bill. She has heard that a folded $1 bill is a notorious mob hit sign. In the days and weeks before his death, Jim received several death threats. Jennifer says the police were aware of these threats. However, the police dispute this. The threats came in various forms, including handwritten and typed letters addressed to the shop and phone calls. Jerica first noticed the threats 2 years before Jim's death. She says he would get phone calls at his office from unknown numbers, with a man screaming, "I'm going to kill you." Jennifer asked Jim if he was worried about the threats, but he laughed it off and said he was not. He did tell her that he was going to be careful and asked her to watch his back. He also told her that he would not back down or let anyone take anything away from him. Jerica believes the death threats were the result of a long-standing feud between Jim and the Crazy Horse 2, a gentleman's club that was located right next to his shop. Steve says it was the most successful club in the city. Since 1984, it had been owned by a man named Rick Rizzalo, who was also Jim's landlord. According to Gus Flangus, Rizzalo had a reputation around Las Vegas as someone who was not nice to people who were averse to him. There were also rumors that the mafia was involved in the club's operations. According to Steve, the feud between Jim and Rizzalo started around 1998, when Jim refused to give up his space for the expansion of the club. Rizzalo tried to have him evicted, but the courts ruled that he did not have grounds for eviction. Jim told reporters about how the club was trying to push him out. He refused to leave, saying he had 4 children to take care of. Steve believes that Jim's shop was worth about $1.5 million, but Rizzalo was not offering him anything. Jim told Steve, "Why should I move? If they're not going to pay me, I'm staying." And that is when the problems started. According to Jennifer, Jim's shop was repeatedly vandalized. Cars were smashed, scratched, and otherwise damaged. Tires were flattened. At one point, the shop was set on fire. Jim lost business as a result. He also had to pay out of pocket to repair any damage that had been done. He eventually decided to have his employees park the cars down the street at night and bring them back in the morning. Foul-smelling dumpsters from the club were placed right behind the shop's back door. Jim told reporters that the club put in phony fire lanes and had city parking enforcement ticket or tow only his customers. Police and fire code inspectors would continually bother him as well. It is believed that Rizalo had friends in Las Vegas City Hall who helped him with this. Jim's family tried to convince him to close or move the shop, but he refused. The threats and vandalism led Roxanne to take their daughters and leave Las Vegas. Over the years, the club began to develop a reputation for violence. There were allegations that bouncers were beating up some of the patrons. Some of these assaults occurred in the parking lot that the club shared with Jim's shop. Jennifer witnessed one assault on a woman who worked at the club. One alleged victim, Kirk Henry, said that in 2002, he had his neck broken after spending a night at the club. He later filed a lawsuit against them. Flangus says there were a lot of alleged incidents involving the club, some of which were documented. Jim reported several of these incidents to the police. He also went to city council meetings with photos and accounts of drug dealing and violent behavior outside the club. Over time, his business suffered hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of damage. With the lost income, interference with his business, and intentional infliction of emotional distress on him, Flangus filed a lawsuit on Jim's behalf against Rizalo for $1 million in 2002. While the lawsuit moved forward, it came out that around 1995, the FBI had investigated the club for racketeering and other crimes. FBI agent Robert Clymer was assigned to work the organized crime program. According to him, from the 1980s to the 2000s, the mafia was involved in running various strip clubs in Las Vegas. He says the clubs make more money per square foot than a casino. For the most part, the money is in cash, so nobody pays taxes on it. Clymer claims that every mafia family in the United States had representation in Rizalo's club. He says the FBI was investigating it because its employees were involved in tax evasion, extortion, and other illegal activities. Rizalo admitted to hiring people with criminal backgrounds, but he denied engaging in any criminal wrongdoing at the club. He also admitted that mob associate Joey Cusimano was his best friend, but said they had no business relationship. Flangus claims that during that time frame, Jim was supplying the FBI with information about what was going on at the club. Clymer says that Jim sent them boxes of evidence, usually weekly, for about 2 years. He also forwarded information from witnesses to the FBI. Clymer says the information was very helpful. Jim's shop was broken into several times. However, nothing was stolen. Steve believes that bugs were planted during the break-ins. Bugs were reportedly found in different parts of the shop, including the main office, the bathroom, and the garage. The wires for the bugs led to the club's office. Jim also discovered surveillance cameras aimed at his shop. On February 20, 2003, the FBI executed a search warrant on the club. 2 SWAT teams and nearly 100 agents were involved. Large amounts of cash were found in Rizalo's office. 16 of the club's employees were indicted. Following the raid, Jim told reporters he was happy that something was being done. In May 2004, Jim won one of his lawsuits in which he claimed that Rizalo had illegally towed cars away from his shop. The judge ordered Rizalo to pay Jim $271. A judge also granted Jim a restraining order against Rizalo's father, Bart, after he claimed Bart tried to run him down with a car. In 2006, Rizalo pleaded guilty to income tax evasion and racketeering. In 2007, he was sentenced to 1 year in federal prison. Meanwhile, Jim began making plans to buy new land and move his shop away from the club. He was relieved that he would finally be able to distance himself from them. He was also working with a company that wanted to make a reality TV show about him. According to Jerica, Jim was relieved that Rizalo had gone to prison since he had caused them so much turmoil. Jim always reassured her that everything would be okay and that she would be protected and safe. However, in March 2008, after serving only 10 months in prison, Rizalo was released for good behavior. After that, he was under house arrest for 1 week. On April 4, he was formally released. 2 days later, Jim was found dead. Steve was told that Lisa had worked at the club for several years as a stripper. If this was true, then she would have known Rizalo. Jennifer believes that Lisa was part of the plan to set Jim up. Several things have led Jim's family to believe he was the victim of foul play. After they identified Jim's body, Jerica and Elise drove around the motel looking for his car. However, it was not there. Strangely, the car keys were found in his motel room. According to Jerica, his car was his prized possession. She asked a police officer about it, but he said they did not know where it was. They told her that they would check across the street. At 5:30 p.m. that day, Jim's car was found in the motel parking lot behind the office. Even though neither the police nor his daughters had seen it there earlier, the car was reportedly in a spot that was visible from the street. Jerica is certain that she and Elise had been to that spot before but had not seen it there. Lieutenant Roberts does not know what happened to the car that afternoon. He says it is possible that the officers simply did not see it. Interestingly, other witnesses claimed that it had been there the whole time. He also theorizes that someone else had access to the car and brought it back later. The police searched the car but did not find any suspicious evidence. Jim's family claims that it had been cleaned. Flangus says there are many strange things about the case that lead him to believe that the police should have taken a deeper and harder look at it. Another inconsistency, according to Jennifer, is that there are 2 phones listed on the police report, neither of which was Jim's. His actual phone was not listed. A silver phone is seen in one of the police photographs. It was listed on the report, but his family never received it. Jennifer wonders whose phone it is and why it was in the room. There is also confusion over the prescription bottle found in the motel room. One report claimed that the bottle was for Valium, while another said it was for Norvasc. The police claimed that no pills were inside it, while the coroner's report said there were 3 Valium pills in it. Jim usually took Valium to help him fall asleep. Jerica says he would not have brought them because he was not planning on staying the night, and she normally prepared them for him. Jim's family noted that 2 cups of water were found on the room's nightstand. They claim that he never drank tap water and always drank bottled water. The room was impeccably clean, even though he was notoriously messy and shed hair wherever he went. His garage door opener was found in the room, but his family says he always kept it on his car's sun visor. Jennifer talked to Jim 2 days before he died. He told her that Rizalo had gotten out of prison and that if they, the people related to the club, were to get him, they would make it look like he died of a drug overdose with women. One of his friends says he had a similar conversation with Jim shortly before his death, in which he said they would use a woman or drug him. On the day Rizalo was released from prison, another break-in occurred at Jim's shop. Once again, nothing was taken. However, a sheet of paper that contained his home address was placed on top of a stack of papers on his desk. When he told Jennifer about this, she asked him what he thought it meant. He told her that they were probably trying to show him that they knew where he lived. That same day, he also received a call from someone who identified themselves as a hitman. The caller threatened to kill him. According to Jennifer, on the day Jim died, he received a letter that said, "Mr. Barrier, meetings have been taking place at various locations around town by Rick Rizalo. Be careful, he's up to no good. He's using people to get close to you. He's discussed using a female to get access to your business." The letter contained Jim's home address. The police did not conduct a homicide investigation into Jim's death, claiming that they found no evidence of foul play. Dr. Sims says that if someone receives death threats, has negative things done to their business, and then ends up dead, the police should investigate. Unsatisfied with the official findings, Jim's family hired a private investigator and an independent pathologist to conduct another autopsy. However, the pathologist declined to share her findings with the family, claiming she needed to hold onto the file in case it goes to court. Steve and Jennifer believe that the police did not take the case seriously. Steve says that they did not treat the motel room like a crime scene. Fingerprints were never taken in the room. Family and friends were never interviewed. Jim's cell phone was never checked for recent calls. Also, the police initially claimed that his death was a suicide. Jennifer asked a detective if they could get a hair sample from Jim's body to prove he was not a drug user. The detective agreed to do so. However, after the funeral, she learned that the detective had never gotten the sample. When Jim's family asked to have his body exhumed, they were told that it could not be done unless law enforcement requested it. Steve says the police should not have had Jerica identify Jim's body since she was so young. He says they never sealed the motel room, as they would with a normal crime scene. Dr. Sims says the integrity of the evidence, including the body, is compromised if the scene is not sealed off. Flangus says that when Jim died, the lawsuit against Rizalo died with him. He says the case would have been weak without Jim's testimony. Jennifer says that Jim made enemies with some powerful people, and she believes he was murdered because of that. Flangus theorizes that the killers got Jim into a vulnerable situation and possibly forced cocaine into him. Dr. Sims says it is possible that there was something in Jim's system that they were unable to detect during the autopsy. He says it is possible that Jim was forced to take cocaine at a level that he was not used to. He also says it is possible that Jim was tricked into taking a higher concentration of cocaine than he thought he was taking. Jennifer claims that doctors have told her that there are only two ways that Jim could have taken a large amount of cocaine in such a short period of time, either through forced inhalation or injection. Jennifer believes that Lisa lured Jim to the motel room. However, she says that since the case was not investigated properly, she does not know the exact circumstances that brought him there. People have told Steve that as a get-out-of-jail gift to Rizalo, someone decided to get rid of Jim. Flangus says the whole case has a bad smell to it and that Jim died under highly suspicious circumstances. He believes that it needs to be investigated as a murder. He has sent letters to the Clark County District Attorney's Office and the Nevada Attorney General's Office, urging them to look into the case. Clymer thinks that the timing of Rizalo's release and Jim's death is suspicious. He does not know if Jim ingested the cocaine willingly or not, but he has more questions than answers. After Jim's death, Jennifer took over his shop to finish the projects he was working on. It has since been closed. In September 2006, the Crazy Horse 2 Club was finally closed after its liquor license was revoked. In September 2007, it was seized by the U.S. Marshals. In 2017, Rizalo was sentenced to 2 years in prison for tax evasion. In August 2019, the club's building was condemned after falling into a state of serious disrepair. In June 2022, a massive fire damaged the building, which is now scheduled to be demolished. Steve says that Las Vegas lost its most colorful character when Jim died. He describes Jim as a big lug that everybody loved. He says Jim's death left a hole in the city that will never be filled. Johnny says that Jim loved to be Buffalo Jim, and that made him happy. Jerica says the years since Jim's death have been very difficult for her. She lost not only her father but also her best friend. She felt alone for many years after his death. In 1999, Jennifer and Jim drove up to a lodge on Mount Charleston. It was a place they went to every few months. While there, he said to her, "If anything were to ever happen to me, would you stand up?" She said, "Yeah, but what does that mean?" She says she now knows what he meant. Jennifer believes there are people out there who know the truth. She hopes they come forward and talk to her. She says she and her family just want to know what happened to Jim. Suspects. Rick Rizalo is considered a potential suspect in Jim's death. The two had been in a feud for several years. Jim had sued Rizalo after he allegedly harassed Jim and damaged vehicles at his shop. Jim had received death threats that he believed were from Rizalo. He gave information to the FBI that helped put Rizalo in prison. Rizalo was released from custody just 1 day before Jim's death. Lisa is also considered a potential suspect in Jim's death. When Jim's daughter called her and asked if she knew Jim, she denied it. She later admitted to the police that she was with him on the night of his death. She claimed that she left him in the motel room after he had a seizure. However, she never called for help. Jim's family believes she lured him to the room where he was killed.